The movie opens with a couple of tourists lost deep in the forest, bickering about which direction they should go. The man, irritated with his wife for leading them off course, decides to venture alone down a path he believes is correct. The woman, frustrated that he won't follow her suggestion, calls after him, but he ignores her. After a few moments, she hears him scream in the distance and rushes toward the sound. However, in the process, she falls into a deep hole, suffering a severe compound fracture in her leg. As the intense pain sets in, she looks around and sees her husband lying motionless beside her, having fallen into the same pit. Struggling to reach him, she notices disturbing movements in the nearby water. Before she can react, a crocodile emerges from the water and devours her alive. A few days later, the movie introduces a young couple, Eric and Jen, who, despite having different tastes in adventure, often explore together. For their next journey, they plan to explore a newly discovered cave with some friends, Victor and Yolanda, who also decide to join the adventure. The group meets up in a town near the forest and finds Cash, an old acquaintance of Eric's, at a bar. While everyone else is drinking, Yolanda is the only one staying sober. Jen, noticing Yolanda's unusual behavior, asks her if she's pregnant, and Yolanda confirms the news in secret, as she hasn't yet told her boyfriend. Jen celebrates the happy news, not realizing that this moment of joy will be overshadowed by the terrifying events to come. The next morning, the group sets off toward the forest. Along the way, Victor asks Cash how he discovered the cave, and Cash shares his story, revealing that he had been part of a search party looking for the missing tourist couple. He stumbled upon the cave while investigating a hole, which led to the discovery of an enormous, unexplored cavern. As Cash finishes his tale, Yolanda notices crocodiles on their path and expresses concern about the danger they pose. Cash, unfazed, pulls out a gun and reassures the group that he can protect them if needed. However, Eric, worried about Cash's recklessness, takes the gun from him and locks it away in the glove compartment. When they arrive at the cave site, Jen's boyfriend checks the weather on his phone and notices a large storm approaching. He asks Cash if they'll be affected, but Cash reassures him that the storm will pass to the south. Trusting him, the group begins preparing their rappelling equipment to descend into the cave. However, this moment marks the first sign that they should be cautious of Cash. As the group gets ready, Cash puts on his safety gear incorrectly, and it's only thanks to Eric's warning that the man avoids a dangerous fall.
What do you reckon? What do you think?
Looking good?
Yeah, it's all good. Why have you? Yes, of course I have.
Right, be careful. And on the brake, all the way down.
Once they begin their descent, the group notices water leaking through cracks in the rocks. Cash explains that it's just normal seepage from nearby rivers, and they continue their exploration. However, as they enter the cave, they realize that the water isn't just seepage, it's actually the result of the storm that has begun flooding the cave from the outside. Undeterred, the group ventures deeper into the cave, navigating through tight spaces that would make anyone with claustrophobia uneasy. They find a beautiful underground lake and celebrate their discovery. Once the excitement fades, the group begins to explore further. Eric comes across another rock leaking water, but this time with much more pressure. Worried that this might signal a potential flood, he convinces his friends to leave immediately. However, as they cross the lake toward the exit, a huge wave of water crashes down, rapidly raising the water level. After the group regains their balance and gathers together, Cash realizes that his backpack has been swept away in the flood. He insists they need to retrieve it, as it contains the car keys, and without it, they would have to walk for days to reach the nearest town. Eric, noticing that the water level continues to rise, comes up with a plan to retrace their steps and escape. But the others are scared, as the narrowest part of the path is now completely submerged. To convince them it's safe, Eric jumps into the water first and begins making his way toward the exit. The rest of the group follows suit, gaining courage from his lead. As they make their way back, Victor spots Cash's backpack floating nearby and diverges from the path to grab it. But as he approaches, a massive creature grabs him, pulling him under. The group splits up in panic, thinking Victor is lost to the beast.
I need to find that backpack.
What's that?
Moments later, a body floats to the surface, and they pull it out, assuming it is Victor's. However, upon closer inspection, they realize that the body isn't his, but a woman's. It turns out to be the body of the tourist who had gone missing with her husband days earlier. It seems the predators devoured the man's body, but kept his wife's for later. The discovery is chilling. Just as they come to terms with the fact that the body isn't Victor's, he suddenly emerges, struggling to break free from the creature's grasp. Seeing their friends still alive, Eric leaps into the water to save him, narrowly avoiding being caught himself. After a tense struggle, they manage to pull Victor to safety and begin tending to his severe injuries. With the water continuing to rise, Eric realizes that they need to act fast to survive. Determined to get Victor to the hospital, Eric comes up with a risky plan. He and Cash will swim back to the car, use the cell phone to call for help, retrieve the gun from the glove compartment, and return to the cave to confront the deadly crocodile. Despite the group's objections, Eric insists that this is their only chance of survival, as crocodiles are highly territorial and won't stop hunting them until they're all dead. With no other option, Cash reluctantly agrees to go with Eric. In a final desperate move, Cash pushes the tourist's body into the water to draw the predator's attention, while Eric and Cash carefully make their way toward the exit, trying to avoid causing any vibrations that might attract the creature. After a tense and difficult journey, they finally reach the last opening that leads to the cave's exit. But then they realize that, due to the current caused by the flood, a large rock has been swept right to the entrance they originally used, blocking their escape route. As is often the case in animal horror films, things are about to get even worse. While the duo struggles to move the massive rock in the submerged lake, Victor suddenly starts having an asthma attack. His inhaler is on the other side of the lake with his girlfriend, Yolanda, many meters away. Knowing that Victor won't survive without the inhaler, Yolanda attempts to throw it across the lake with all her strength, but it falls short, landing right in the middle of the water. Determined to save her partner, Yolanda bravely enters the water, even knowing the risk of encountering the deadly crocodile. She slowly swims across, heading toward the inhaler that has drifted to the center of the lake. Just as she reaches it, the crocodile appears right beside her. Terrified but trying to remain still, Yolanda freezes, praying the animal won't notice her. Fortunately, the creature swims past, distracted by the floating body of a tourist. Yolanda seizes the opportunity and swims as fast as she can back to shore, narrowly escaping the crocodile's deadly jaws.
Do not move. Do not move a muscle.
After saving Victor, and believing their situation to be hopeless, Yolanda finally tells him that she's pregnant, a revelation that deeply moves him. With the rock still too heavy to move, the duo decides to rejoin the others. However, as they prepare to swim under a section of the cave, Eric's leg gets stuck on a rock at the bottom. While he struggles to free himself, Cash, who is waiting for Eric on the other side, dives back in to help. As he searches for his friend, Cash encounters the crocodile and is swiftly attacked, his body completely devoured by the monster. Once Eric manages to free himself and reach the other side, he finds Cash's flashlight floating in the water, but no sign of his friend. Worried, he decides to return and rejoin the rest of the group. When they are reunited, Eric explains that the entrance they used is now blocked and tells them what happened to Cash. Just then, Jen feels a breeze and starts looking around to figure out where it's coming from. She discovers a crack in the rock, a potential escape route. Believing this might be their way out, she shares her find with the others, and Eric and Yolanda volunteer to investigate. Meanwhile, Victor and Jen, who had been waiting for the others, decide to move to a higher part of the cave, knowing the water will soon reach them. Despite Victor's injuries, they begin to climb, making their way into the higher ground. As soon as they reach the new level, the crocodile leaps at them, nearly catching Jen's leg. As she helps Victor up, the animal lunges again, almost seizing the injured man. While they're trying to figure out their next move, Victor notices Cash's backpack floating in the water, containing the car keys. Desperate for a way out, Jen decides to retrieve it. She leans out as far as she can, but when she realizes she won't reach, she bravely enters the water. As she gets closer to the backpack, Victor sees the crocodile approaching and warns her. In her haste, Jen grabs the backpack and frantically tries to escape the water, but she slips and hits her head on a rock, knocking herself out instantly. Realizing that his friend is about to become the crocodile's next meal if he doesn't act fast, Victor, despite being seriously injured, rushes to help Jen. But just as he manages to lift her to her feet, the crocodile leaps out of the water, grabbing Victor in its jaws. The creature tears him apart, leaving him no chance to survive. Once the crocodile finishes with Victor, the remaining pair, Eric and Yolanda, return to Jen, only to be struck with the devastating news that yet another friend has been claimed by the deadly reptile. While the group mourns the loss, Eric spots something strange. In the middle of the lake, there's a current pulling the water downward. This indicates there's a crack at the bottom, like a drain, sucking water out. With their choices limited to either staying and waiting for the inevitable or taking a desperate chance, the group decides to swim toward the crack in the lake, hoping it will be their way out. But as they approach, Yolanda panics and stirs the water too much, alerting the crocodile to their presence. It begins to chase them. In a final heroic act, Eric stops and turns to face the beast, knife in hand, determined to give the women a fighting chance. As the crocodile lunges toward him, he hopes to kill it, but the creature is far too powerful. Meanwhile, Yolanda and Jen make it through the drain, reaching the other side and rushing into the crocodile's lair. There, they find a severed hand, the remnants of the beast's previous victims. Fearing they might be trapped, the two women scramble to find an exit. Once they finally make it outside, they follow a road until they find Cash's car. Thinking they're safe, Jen starts driving toward the town, but disaster strikes when they nearly hit a fallen tree. Trying to avoid it, Jen swerves, and the car plunges back into the swamp they had just escaped from. As they attempt to flee from the sinking car, Jen spots the crocodile approaching. Panicked, they scramble to retrieve the gun from the glove compartment. The crocodile attacks the car, forcing them to dive into the water to avoid drowning. They swim desperately for the shore, but the predator is still on their trail. When Jen reaches the land and looks back into the water, she sees the crocodile closing in on Yolanda. Without thinking, Jen dives back in to pull her friend to safety. But in the process, she becomes the crocodile's next target, dragged under while firing the gun at the beast. Most of her shots miss, but in a final act of defiance, she manages to land a fatal shot. With the crocodile dead, the two women, exhausted but alive, embrace each other, grateful to have survived the nightmare and finally leave the cursed swamp behind. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.